Welcome to week 10 of Explore the Bible. Now we're continuing in the book of Deuteronomy. Today we're in Deuteronomy chapter 12. Appreciate you joining me this morning, afternoon, whatever time it is, night, whenever you're watching. Some of you are late Saturday night. Some of you are later. You're on Sunday morning. That's when you're watching. Whenever it is, we're glad you're joining us. If you haven't already, be sure and subscribe, hit the like button. Comment if you've got a question, if you've got an answer. Tell us how you're going to be teaching, something you learned out of this you want to make sure people hear in your class. Then share the video with somebody else. All right, appreciate it if you'll do that. You can support our work by going to give.exposedtochrist.com. Okay, we're going to look at Deuteronomy chapter 12. Well, let's do this like that. There, that's better. Be careful to follow these statutes and ordinances in the land that the Lord, the God of your ancestors, has given you to possess all the days you live on the earth. Destroy completely all the places where the nations that you're driving out worship their gods, on the high mountains, on the hills, and under every green tree. Okay, so Deuteronomy is Moses' last message to the Israelites. They're about to cross over into the promised land. He's giving them these last-minute instructions. And here it is, this, be careful to follow the statutes, right? Be careful. Let's change this. Let's go to, if I can get it to change, maybe not. Be careful to follow the statutes. Listen to what God has said. Be obedient to the Lord, okay? The statutes that he has, the ordinances that he has. But then I want you to notice this other thing that I think is really important, right? God's given you this land. This is where you're going to live, right? You must destroy completely all of the places where the nations that you're driving out worship. When you get there, there's going to be all these other worship areas. There's all these other places where they did their worship. All these places where they expressed their rituals. You've got to destroy them completely. You've got to totally wipe them out. Because you can't have these other places there competing for thought and allegiance. You can't have these other places there where in subsequent generations or even in your generation, you might be tempted to walk over here. You've got to get rid of the false worship. You've got to get rid of the false gods completely. And this is a tough one. You know, this is a difficult one because these were places where that meant that the people that you're conquering are going to lose those places. And you got all people have all kinds of different ideas about what you ought to do to preserve these things. And he's like, no, you got to get rid of them all. Okay. Yeah, we still can't change that, but tear down their altars. Tear down the altars. Smash the sacred pillars. Burn the Asherah poles. Cut down the carved images of their gods. Wipe out their names from every place. Completely obliterate it. It must be totally gone. And then look what he says. Don't worship the Lord your God this way. Instead, turn to the place the Lord your God chooses from all your tribes to put his name for his dwelling place and go there. Do you hear what he's saying? Moses is telling them, you don't just take what they had and adopt it for your own and then say, well, we'll just do worship kind of like they did. It's kind of convenient. They've already got a little altar set up here. They've already got, stuff. We'll just kind of use that for ours. He says, no, you don't do that. You don't worship the Lord the way they worship their false gods. You don't do that, right? And then he says, instead, you go to the place the Lord your God chooses to put his name for his dwelling. Well, where is this going to be, right? This is Jerusalem, right? This is what it's going to be. God will decide where you worship, how you worship. God has already made those decisions, so you just go where God tells you to go. You don't meld these things in. We might call it today syncretism, where you take the existing traditions and you just kind of create traditions around them that look to be God honoring. You just change the names of them. We need to be careful with this. He's telling them you got to be careful with this, right? Okay. You're to bring there, this place where God will decide, we know, Jerusalem, the temple, your burnt offerings and sacrifices, your tenths and personal contributions, your vow offerings and free will offerings, and the firstborn of your herds and flocks. All the stuff that the Lord has been telling them about in Leviticus. Numbers, all of that. You got it, mostly Leviticus. You got to do that there. You'll eat there in the presence of the Lord your God and rejoice with your household in everything you do, because the Lord your God has blessed you. You are not to do as we are doing here today. Everyone is doing whatever seems right in his own sight. He says, everybody right now is just kind of doing whatever they want to do, however they want to do it. He says, not to do it that way. Israel, there's going to be a place for you to go, a singular place, and there is a way for you to worship. And we know that Israel ends up creating other spots for worship. No, he says, there's one place. And this is where all of these things that the Lord has told you about, these different offerings and celebrations, this is where they happen as God decides. God is the ruler of the nation. He's making this very clear to them. It's a struggle they have. Indeed, you've not yet come into the resting place and the inheritance the Lord your God is giving you. When you cross the Jordan and live in the land the Lord your God is giving you to inherit, and he gives you rest from all the enemies around you, and you live in security, then the Lord your God will choose the place to have his name dwell. Bring there everything I command you, your burnt offerings, sacrifices, offerings of the tenth, personal contributions, all your choice offerings you vow to the Lord. He says, look, here's what's going to happen. All right? We're not there yet. We're not there yet. Okay? But when you cross the Jordan and you live there, right, and he gives you rest from your enemies and you live in security, then the Lord will choose the place. And then you will bring there everything I've commanded you. You see, the Lord he's being a little bit of a stickler, isn't he? But who is it that gets to determine this? Who is it? Is there a vote on this? Is there some kind of a democratic process where we can vote about where we want to worship? No. You do it the Lord's way. The Lord's the one that decides. I think way too many times we just want to do things our way, right? We just kind of want to adopt, can we just do this? No. Now we have to be careful, because the Lord has not given us commands now in the new covenant that were given under the first covenant, the old covenant to Moses. This covenant to Moses agreement is different than what we have now. We know that. We see that in the New Testament, these changes that are made, right? But clearly, he is making very specific demands on them for worship, and what it looks like, and where it is, and all of that, and what they are to do with the other stuff. And we'll see that here. When the Lord your God annihilates the nations before you, there is something here to remember. When the Lord your God annihilates them, the Lord would want us to remember that he's the one who's going to win these battles, right? When the Lord your God annihilates the nations before you, which you're entering to take possession of, and you drive them out and live in their land, be careful not to be ensnared by their ways. Be careful not to be ensnared by their ways. Verse 30 is an important verse. After they have been destroyed before you, do not inquire about their gods, asking, how did these nations worship their gods? I'll also do the same. You must not do the same to the Lord your God, because they practice every detestable act which the Lord hates for their gods. They even burn their sons and daughters in the fire to their gods. Be careful to do everything I command you. Do not add anything to it or take anything away from it. Before somebody starts feeling sorry for these nations that have been wiped out, these nations are despicable. And here he tells you even, they burn their sons. They practice child sacrifice. I have been to the place, one of the places in Syria where they practice child sacrifice. Ancient days, you'll see, I don't know if it's still there, because I know there was a lot of stuff that got wiped out in the wars that have happened there, but I've been to this place where there were these, a grand area, the remaining walls of this temple and the altar where fire was burned. You can see where fire was burned even thousands of years ago, where people were sacrificed, children were sacrificed to false gods. And the Lord is saying, when you get to your place and we take it all over and we annihilate these other people, you don't take up their practices. You don't ask, well, I wonder how they did it. Maybe we could do it like that. That's why he says you got to turn it all down, tear it all down. It's all got to be gone. You can't leave it. You can't leave any vestiges, because the Lord knows how we are. The Lord knows that we're tempted to want to kind of take some of that and we'll spice our religion up a little bit and we'll do, no, the Lord says, no, you've got to be true to what I've told you to do. We must stay true to the gospel. And if there is anything, in this cultural battles that are taking place now, we really need to be careful about what part of the culture we think is not invasive and harmful and what part is. And we have to be careful about that and making those judgments, because sometimes, I think always, there is a temptation that we see it here 3,000 years ago. There is a temptation to take that which is in the culture and just kind of adopt it in and let it become part of who we are as followers of God. And God does not always look kindly to that. And clearly here, he is drawing a line. Their pagan rituals, their following these other gods and the way they did their worship cannot be a part of what happens among God's people. Hey, thanks for watching. I hope that's helped as you go through your time of study. I think there's a good conversation there to be held about culture and today and what it is that we adopt in and how we have to be very careful about all of that, okay? Subscribe, like, comment, share with somebody else. Appreciate that. We'll see you next time.